Instagram after.
Gotcha.
It's like a 10-second delay where the button on Instagram actually loads up. I'm sure everyone in the audience is already like, yeah, right on schedule. But welcome in everybody to College Soccer Match Day. I'm Mark Elkenberg, joined as always by Dylan Lane, and this time we have special guest Adam Lundegard, 2-year captain of Clemson for 2023, 2024, 3-year starter a year prior to that, holding a team record of 43, 13, and 10 over that span, 3 ACC championship final appearances, winning 1. But most importantly, I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. I view you as a 2-time national championship winner, despite the 2021 season redshirting due to injury. But you're in the environment, you're around the team, but then also obviously the 2023 campaign, which was quite a legendary run in terms of tournament time. The Clemson team, I guess, blast into the memory bank. Only 1 goal was allowed by your defense throughout the whole tournament, and that came in the final with your 2-1 win over Notre Dame at the time. But even like throughout the season, 19 of the 25 games, the Clemson defense held their opponent to 1 goal or less. So that's, one of the bits of recipe that we'll get into when we start talking about 2025. But yeah, welcome in. I wanted to give like a little bit of a rundown for everybody. Anything you got for us right off the bat?
Yeah, no, it's just a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be in you guys' company and talk about the game, talk about college soccer and its growth. So happy to share some of my experiences and get into a little bit more depth.
For sure. So I know our fans out there are probably like, where have they been? Where have Dylan and Mark been? And we'll get into that a little bit, like the 2025 breakdown, what we've kind of seen over the past 2 weeks that we haven't really reported upon much. But Dylan, do you got any themes? I know
we've been watching the game, so it's not.
Yeah.
Even though we haven't been doing episodes, we've been watching the games, taking notes, still doing all of the Google Sheets and docs that we'll have at the end of the season, so don't worry about that. But yeah, it's just the games this year, I would say more than the last couple of years, have been sporadic and I think inconsistent in regards to results. And I think, that's a kind of a generic statement, but breaking it down, a team will win against a top 25 team, then lose against an unranked team, but then tie a ranked team, then lose again to an unranked team. Like rankings don't matter.
A blowout on some other team. It's like all up
rankings
and down.
Don't matter, of course, right now, because it's not even halfway through the season, and you want to peak at the right time. But yeah, it's just we've been looking a lot at the players more than the team performances, because the team performances within a 90-minute game, I think 60%, maybe even 70%, is a lot of back and forth. So the trends of the games are not inconsistent, but there's not common themes throughout the game. I think teams have common game models and the way they want to play, but implementing it is difficult when you don't know who you're going to be playing against, because a team could play one way one game and the next way change the formation, change the way they play. So I think that theme for me is a big one this year, of just not inconsistency of results, but it's inconsistency of the game flow and game state.
Yeah. And Adam, I know we talked about this on the phone, just with again, what Dylan was saying, the fluctuation of results in some of the matchups. But what are some of your impressions on what you've seen?
Yeah, I think I haven't watched probably as closely as you guys have, but just knowing a little bit behind the scenes of the roster changes and the scholarship rule changes, I think it's a completely different landscape right now, and that's definitely reshaped the rosters and how teams look. But I feel like it's also maybe even the playing field out. I get the sense that the best programs aren't hoarding the best players anymore. It seems like there's a little bit more parity, and a lot of maybe mid-major programs are getting some really talented players and having some really talented rosters and being able to compete a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think on a lot of those notes, you see some coaches that come from really storied programs or work underneath very successful coaches and some of the best in the nation for the past 20 years that move on to, a mid-major. And like, I know George Mason kind of had a couple results in there that were a little shaky, but for the profile and what, like, going up against some of these top teams, the coach came from, I believe, the Jay Vidovich tree. So, that rise of the mid majors and, what Chris Rich and UNC Greensboro were able to do. Like in it, some of those, like, well, obviously Vermont coming in and building a foundation and then eventually winning it all last year. But also the piece of, I feel like within the new, it's been around for a little bit now, but I think we're finally starting to see more of the transfer portal effect where there's a lot of rotation in the squad because coaches are trying to keep guys happy, so they'll stick around. They aren't just going to be jumping ship after a year to find more playing time. So you don't get like the continuity of maybe the past where you had your 14 or 15 guys and the rest were just kind of like not even involved. Now there's just a whole bunch of, maybe figuring out who you have on the roster and what they're capable of early or earlier than maybe the past. And, you got a bunch of different playing styles within each of the positions. So you're trying to incorporate and get the best out of players who might not be so as comfortable in the system that they're now playing in. So you're starting to see some inconsistencies, mainly in, and this kind of goes into the player-by-player thing of like failed assignments, giving up bad plays that result in goals. And we'll move away from this and start talking about like maybe what programs can remind themselves of, especially with like your history with Clemson and their sustained success. Like they're currently undefeated in ACC play right now, but not to be like too all over the place, but there was just so much stuff that we had talked about on game to game. So that's again why Dylan and I, we started more so zeroing in on player performances rather than maybe breaking down the entire team and how they play. Yeah, I guess we'll touch on the player performances and things like that. Like, again, with some of the systems too, over what we've seen, or at least I've seen, some systems aren't actually accommodating or getting the best out of what could be key players out there. Not showcasing or not even from like what they're going to do in the future. But if you have key guys that have key sets of attributes and they're not even using them over the course of their appearance, it kind of takes away from what could be impact moments.
Yeah, and I think, Adam can talk about it, the Clemson 2023 team, you guys play like a 3-4-3, but I looked at that system and it seemed like you guys saw, like the coaching staff saw the players you had and then created a system that fit the best attributes of those players rather than already having a set formation and system and trying to fit, a square and a diamond. Like you can't, what I mean? So I feel like you can talk about that, but like this year, I think the teams that have the most success see the players and the best attributes and like, okay, how can we get the best 11 on the field while still maintaining how we play. But if we have to change it, we're willing to do it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was thinking as well with just the changes in college soccer this year. I feel like it's maybe taking a little bit longer for coaches to figure out what system works for them. And that's why we maybe haven't seen systems highlighting the players rather than players making individual performances and taking the game for themselves. But in 2023, it took us some time as well. You know, we didn't have the best start. And then once we realized that we needed to, you know, maybe sacrifice a little bit of the individual side of things to make sure we had the best team performance and team balance, I think that's where we really took off.
Yeah, and I think with Uzi, Ismail Silla at the time too, like when you do have that caliber of a player, especially in the attack, and teams are obviously highlighting his name on the pre-match reports and stuff. It's like, how do we maintain his impact, even though he's kind of a marked man out there? So working your way around, or as the staff had figured out, like how to, you know, keep his impact intact, especially when the games are going to get a lot more intense in tournament time.
And I think with that Clemson team, playing the 3-4-3 is very common in college, especially if you have athletic, dynamic back three. So I feel like you guys were very expansive, which is good, but also as a back three, you knew that the game would get stretched, but you all backed yourselves in regards to a ball over the top. I mean, you guys are probably going to win that. Then you have Remy on one side who's going to be recovering. You know what I mean? Then you had Sean Smart before that. So I felt like while another team might try to do a three at the back, they might have two outside center backs who are unmobile. So then they know that if the game gets stretched, mentally it's wraps because they know one long ball, it's going to be this back and forth, and they don't have that. Like, I think the mental side of the game and just knowing like, okay, I have that back three that can play well with the ball, but off the ball it's going to be a struggle. And all it takes is one ball in the college game too.
Yeah,
so
and that mental side.
That mental side too, especially against a captain. It's like you probably gave your forwards confidence, like just go and do it because we can handle it back here, you know.
Yeah, and even times where I knew I wasn't the fastest one on that back line, but I had Pop Marboy behind me to, you know, make a special tackle or come and save me if I needed it.
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing too that maybe coaches can look at is attribute balance. So you don't need, and I see mainly more in the midfield, especially in double pivots, like just straight up duplications of the position. And when, especially if you, maybe some teams out there who do run a double pivot that maybe aren't scoring as much or having as many good goal opportunities, you know, the attack can be boosted by a creative midfielder. And I think that's where like the Jerron Gerbet, who I've said from like day one that he was very capable of being a lone six, which creates more of like the two midfielders above him that are a little bit more engaged with the front three and can combine and all that. So even having like just the mix of attributes within position groups and especially partnerships like you and Pop being different, but both excelled at such a high level, like your passing and ability on the ball with like some of the aggression in there, not letting guys turn. And like the vision, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, especially against a one striker system, when you have two center backs, I usually would say wherever that center forward's going, one of the two center backs should be monitoring if they're going to try to find him to feet. That way you're right on his back, challenging. And then the other guy's kind of like waiting to see if that ball's going to come over the top, and then you go move on it.
Yeah, I think that the balance and characteristics, like you said, is something that it's maybe overlooked, but at the same time, it's sometimes you don't have the options available. You can be limited if you maybe only have two left backs that are more of a pacey type of player, and you don't have somebody who's more reserved and can fill in and maybe stay a little deeper. Coaches have to figure out what they actually have at their disposal. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think you obviously see it as a center back, but in the modern game, the fullbacks are, this goes back to kind of my childhood where you started to see the fullbacks getting a lot more engaged in the attack. And if you're left center back, you're looking at your left back who's, responsible for creating the width in the attack. That leaves you to help cover them. And it's a lot of work for these wingbacks nowadays. But when you have center backs and again, this goes into what we've harped on before, like you have to know your defending responsibilities and know who you're covering for and knowing who you're sharing responsibilities on the man marking and things like that. That some teams are just or players are struggling to keep that discipline. But that's a part of I think what the Clemson, maybe you can talk about the type of the mentality or the discipline within that team or the culture.
Yeah, I think the chemistry is really important there because sometimes as a center back, you are going to get left alone if that's the sort of style that you're going to play with outside backs creating that width. And it's understanding the players that you're playing with and understanding their habits and then being able to adapt to that. And I think at Clemson, we did that very well. Sometimes Arthur Duquesne, I would be getting mad at him for running too far up, but, we figure out different ways to solve the problem. And I think that's something that we did and instilled in our culture that, it doesn't matter how we solve it. We just have to solve it together. And I think that just takes time. You just have to spend a lot of time together on and off the field and, bringing it back to this year and what this season is looking like. I think rosters are different and players haven't spent as much time with each other with more transfers, going to different schools, first years here and there. So I think it's just going to take a little longer for that to work itself out.
And I think one of the talking points we want to bring up is the purpose of the culture and why is a player there. Because kids can transfer now and whatnot, a coach can be like, come to a smaller school, right, and be the man in some way or get more minutes, right, and get more recognition and help the team strive to make an NCAA tournament run. So that's good. But then again, if that player doesn't have that buy-in to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, that's when it can get a little bit toxic. So I think it's great because you look at the rankings, even though I say right now you have to take it with a grain of salt, it's a lot of mid-major teams or teams that you might not expect. And you look at the roster and it's like, oh, that player was at a Power 5 school or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. Right. But I think the schools that are most successful, of course, you have the big ACC ones, right? But the mid-major ones are ones that have a good culture and the players realize that if the team does well, then I will do well. Yeah. Whereas you might see another team that has a stacked roster and you might be like, why aren't they winning as many games? Because the player, he already has 1 foot in next season and wanting to do something in the future, and that just takes away from right now in that game,
Yeah.
I think we've seen that.
I think culture is everything. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from my experience at Clemson. And the transfer portal is definitely changing it with those guys that may have been 16 to 21 on the roster. They're great players and they're looking for other options. But before it was as prevalent, and now that scholarships are more available, I think it took a lot of leadership and a lot of connection because every great program recruits on, we're a great program. We have historic success. You can be a part of it. You can create something here, but then you come and there's only 11 to 15 spots of guys that are really going to play a lot of the minutes and make a big impact. So you have to learn how to make sure that they don't feel like they're on the outside looking in, and to give them purpose and make sure that they still believe in the project and still have that buy-in. So it's different for everybody, but that's the key parts.
As a captain, how did you manage that? Because I think everyone on that national championship team of course they were bought in, right? You guys are successful, you guys were doing well, but don't get me wrong, there's going to be players that want to play because they might be performing well in training, or they just might think they deserve an opportunity. As a captain, were there times in training or before practice, after practice, you would talk to guys and, like, you know, because I think as a captain, you need to sense the locker room, especially certain players, and how you might talk to a freshman isn't how you're going to talk to your senior roommate. You know what I mean? So were there some times where you had to kind of not put your foot down, but be like, hey, we see you, and just keep, you know, trust the process kind of?
Yeah, there were definitely times where you have to understand where people are coming from, because it's not easy to be the guy who is maybe on the last spot of the roster. But I think the biggest thing that we did differently from other programs, having talked to friends and players, I think is each season our inflection point kind of came with this purpose meeting, led by myself and the other captain, Brandon Parrish, or whoever it was before we were captains. We tried to keep this going because we recognized how important it was that everybody kind of broke down the barriers and tried to be vulnerable and share what really keeps them going. You know, it's not easy for somebody who's not seeing the field, wondering if coach even sees them, to keep pushing and keep giving it everything for their teammates every single day. And then when everybody breaks that stuff down, you can kind of see the story or see the bigger picture and understand what you're fighting for, understand that maybe there's somebody who's going through this and you really need to sacrifice for them as a brother, as a teammate. And just that really instilled that connection and that purpose in the team. And I think ultimately that was what allowed us to last for the national championship each time.
Yeah, and I feel like you can see that, like, teams right now, you can kind of get an impression on who or what teams are really together as a group versus, you know, it's probably more obvious to see, you know, which particular players they don't really care about the team success. It's all about, you know, what type of stats they can get, what accolades they can get. Because, like Dylan said, they might have one foot out the door looking at, well, if I do X, Y, and Z here, like, I don't care about the team. Like, it's all about me getting to the next level. And it's, you know, a different perspective where I think all of us are in agreement, like, and plenty of scouts and team personnel that I've talked to, it's, you want players that have a winning mentality, a lack of ego, to where they will back up their teammates, will bail out teammates for mistakes, not harp on or point fingers, or, you know, hearing some of the stories about, like, the interactions between some of these players and the coaches. It's like some of the stuff, it's wild to hear that a player is saying that, or saying certain things to coaches at this point, because it's like, it just takes away from the team. And I feel like, I mean, I've always told the teams that I coach at the U15 to the U18 levels, it's like, you know, if you want eyes on you for college opportunities, one of the easiest ways to do that is win some damn games. Then everyone's going to want to look at you. They can see how your role is within that team. You'll find opportunities that way. Like, if you're scoring a ton of goals, but people show up and they're like, wow, this guy has a lot of goals, I want to see him in person. But then they see bad attitude. It's like diva mentality. Like, they're like, yeah, I mean, he's good, but do I want to put up with that guy for, 4 years?
So I think, like, two things. The first one is, I think those stories that we hear, I think it comes from a place where the coaching staff, they don't nip it in the butt right away, where it's like they see it and they're like, oh, it's fine. You know, it's competition. But, you know, it can be a little too personal at times, or a little toxic. And then they think, oh, you know, let it be. And then it happens again and again. And now it's a theme within the team. So if you do lose a game, or you go on a bad run of games, the first thought is, this is, I'm going to be toxic because the last month it's been like that. And I haven't gotten told off otherwise, you know? So I think, especially now that we're coming towards the half of the season, a lot of the conference games are coming up, big matchups, right? Like for tonight, you'll see certain teams kind of either sink or swim, because if they lose a couple more games, the mentality can be like, you know what, throw the regular season away, but conference tournament, we'll win it all, right? We'll win it all. And then it gets there and it's like, wait a second. No, because the mentality is the exact same.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best teams do the best job of self-regulating that. I think one of the quotes I remember from the coaching staff and our sports psychologist was, let the coaches coach. When they aren't doing the job of controlling egos and babysitting and everything like that, and the leadership of the team is doing that, the team is in a much better place when it's all self-regulated, because you have that adds to the buy-in and also frees up the coaches, to do what they're best at.
Yeah, and obviously it's cliche, but like when you do have strong performers with strong work ethic and standard for themselves, and then the new crew comes in and they see the Adam Lundegards of the world and the Jerron Gerbays, they're like, man, all right, that's what it takes. And I mean, you hear it with a lot of successful teams, like, because what you just said, I heard that at one of the high school teams where the culture just like went from basically being a state contender to just dropping off completely. But it was a group of seniors that really held the players responsible. And you can do that even as a younger player. And I do want you to kind of go back and in terms of like the leadership stuff, there's a lot of guys out there who are younger, brand new to programs, but they come in having been the club captain from their youth days, and they're kind of like leaderships in training. And maybe some examples, I guess, from your days, but like despite being one of the elder guys last year, and I guess even in 2023, just with like the amount of games that you had played at that point, young guys coming in, I guess what are some main things that come to mind when, I guess, giving them advice out there?
Yeah, I think understanding your role, even if it's not the role that you want, is an important place to start, because you're not gonna will your way to being the starting player in your position as a freshman just by complaining or wanting it or trying to change what your role is. But then once you can accept that and do your best every day to just keep improving yourself, because you have the most time that you'll have in your college career or in your youth career, that's important. But then just be super adaptable and willing to learn. I think one of the best things that happened to me was that injury, and being able to watch from the outside a little bit more in 2021 and seeing a great group of leaders with the likes of James Brighton, George Marks, Callum, everybody that was in that group. They did a really good job of showing me what it took, but I had to be aware and make sure my eyes were on, my ears were on. I was listening and absorbing all the information that I could. And then I think it's just, once you have what you need to say, you have to figure out how to say it, when to say it, what's the right way to communicate it. And then you can try to build the team that way.
Dylan, you're also a former captain.
No, I think he said it best. Like,
put you on the spot here.
No, you can know what to say, but if it's all in the tone. If you say it the wrong way, then there's a bigger issue at play, I would say. And like the bigger issue in the sense of they might take it the wrong way, which leads to another conversation, another whatever it may be. But yeah, it's, I think when you become a captain, it's all the previous years, that lessons you've learned without even knowing that you've learned them, seeing the captains before you, taking stuff that you like from them, then adding your own twist to it, right? And usually not alone as a captain. So I had two other great captains with me, and we all had different strengths and weaknesses, and we all offset each other, which helped us be successful and they kind of control the locker room. But I think the biggest thing is, early on, just kind of setting the tone of realizing why you're here. And you probably have the conversation too. It's, if you're a senior or fifth year, this is your last season of possibly playing at a high level, right? So it's wanting to give it your all and be in the moment. And then you look at the freshman and be like, you're going to blink and be in this position, So it's, having those conversations early on and just making sure everyone's grounded. But like Adam said, like there's going to be times in the season when you're having a rough day or a rough patch of games and you're going to have to talk to one or two players because they're having a rough day, but they need you more than basically you need yourself at the time because you got to carry the team and help the team. So I think, advice for kids coming in is just, listen more than you talk, like take it in, be ready, because you'll be called upon when you least expect it. And if you weren't preparing and seeing how the older kids do it, then you could be in trouble. Not in trouble in the sense like you'll get talking to, but you don't know where to be on the field. You don't know how to carry yourself because you're too much in your head, So I think just listen and take it all in. And slowly, when you earn the respect and training and games, that's when you can kind of have your own voice. But don't come first practice saying all this wild stuff.
Oh, I was the man where I came from.
We all have like a welcome to college moment, right? Whether it's like someone talking or not, but it's like you have to earn the respect, especially like at a place like Clemson. Like you have some of the most talented freshmen coming in from the country and overseas. Not saying there's egos there, but like they still have to be humble and respect the older players. And then after a couple of weeks, it's like, okay, like Siller, for example, he probably came in and was very humble. And then after a couple of training sessions, like, okay, like, like you can let him do some things because, it's worth it. It's a give and take.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I'll add into that, just from my personal experience, having redshirted my freshman year and then coming in for my first playing year, I knew that I wasn't going to wear the armband. I wasn't going to be the vocal leader. I knew that guys like Isaiah Reed had earned that and had established themselves, and those were going to be our voices to look to. But my goal for that year was to try to be this energy that nobody could kind of see, the thing that kind of kept us up on the down days, and it just was always there, trying to push the right attitude and the right mentality. And that's something I would definitely recommend, understanding that it's not going to come when you expect it, but you can lead in other ways.
Yeah, and I think both of what you guys said, when you're, especially in your early days, when you're learning as much as you can from everybody, like, you hopefully as you develop your own style, because I do think obviously the authenticity is important. Like if it's off brand or it seems inauthentic, you don't have to copycat the guys that came before. Like you're going to have your own style because you have your own personality, but to find things that work and resonate with you as you progress and get older and have more experience. And then, making it true to yourself and how you deliver certain conversations and, when to speak up. And I think, you don't always have to say the perfect thing at the perfect time, but as long as it's genuine and it comes from a place of we're all here for the same mission, hopefully to win championship or win games, compete for championships and things like that, then you're heading in the right direction.
Funny that just kind of take us on a little side story. I just remembered while you were talking there, being authentic in 2023 national championship final. I always gave the speeches before games, and I was so nervous. I tried to start giving my speech, and it basically just was a train wreck, and I didn't even end up getting through it. But I looked around, and it was just love and authenticity from everybody in the room, and it was like they didn't care what I had to say. They just cared that I was being myself in that moment, and once they knew that, it was like, all right, we just need you. We don't need you to give us some crazy speech. And I was there and they were there, and the rest is history.
Them speeches are tough though. Like you be thinking before what to say, and you're like, I've said everything I could possibly say already. What now?
Yeah. Well, especially like between, I guess, players and coaches, like, I'm not throwing chairs, but I forget who said it. It might have been a football thing or something, but it was like, you can really only throw a chair once.
Yeah.
And it's like an analogy for, certain like I'm not a rah-rah every game, like we got to get jacked up type, but you want to save those types of speeches for certain moments. You can't just like week one be like, we're going to win, like just going crazy.
Every game matters, but the first game you can't be like, this is what the season's meant to be, you know. It's but it's a good balance. It's a good balance.
Yeah, so I guess just finding a way around that and just sensing the moments is a needed thing. But yeah, built off of like the team success part and some of the player stuff that we've covered, Dylan and I, we've kind of looked at what's the current recipe for who might be a major threat within this 2025 campaign. And I think Clemson has a lot of that, like the checklist going. So we'll have to see how it all shapes out. But I mean, some of the notes that we had in here were like, when you look at the NC States who are performing really well, you have a prolific striker or an attack that seemingly can't be stopped. Obviously, there will be some teams that can figure it out, but like when you have a consistent threat in the attack and multiple, that's hard because you got to score goals to win games, obviously. But then having talent across all the position groups, but I would say that there's not only like talent can only take you so far. Being disciplined, having each other's back, and executing your role in every game to where there aren't glaring mistakes. Like we do see over the past 2 weeks, some programs who are wildly consistent in how they move the ball. They aren't making many mistakes. They might struggle to get results just on like maybe a striker crisis type situation or things like that. But I mean, going back to your national championship run in 2023, there were no mistakes in the back. I mean, none that you were at least punished for. So what are some components of, especially halfway or we're approaching halfway through conference play in the ACC, teams will need to figure it out soon. If you haven't seen the updated standings, and again, the ACC wins are at a premium. So I guess what are some of those like aspects within the on match day, what teams need to be focusing on to get the results that they want? And
I think, like you were saying, talent is always important. You have to have that power to win. But I think it's less important this year than in other years because of that parity, and every program has super talented players nowadays. The next most important things, I would say, being chemistry, having this kind of goes along with chemistry, but having a defined style and sort of purpose to your play, having everybody on the same page and understanding that that's the way you'll play. And then I think this year more than ever, I think defensive grittiness is going to come more into play because of how much talent there is. Whoever can figure out that defensive combination and solution the best, I think will go the furthest.
Dylan?
I agree, and I think the most successful teams have a very strong pillar and core right through the middle. So solid center back or back line, a goal scorer who gets 10 plus goals a season. I think we've seen teams be successful with like the front three or four scoring like each 4 or 5 goals. But what takes a team to the next level and consistent in a long run in the tournament is like a goal scorer that gets you 15 to 12 goals, even more, because you want players to all contribute, but if you have that one player you can count on and that you'll know that he probably will score a goal, not only does it help like actually on the field, but mentally it's like you're never going to be out of a game. And then you add that with some wingers or attacking mids that have 4 or 5 goals. That's a team that's always going to be in a game. And yeah, I just feel like understanding the tactics and how you play. I mean, I know we talked about earlier that for that Clemson team, you guys had a talented group of players and handpicked the best way of playing. And then I think giving them the freedom within the system is important too. Where he was, Cecilia would be maybe on the left side 10 of that 3-4-3, but he was more than capable of drifting in. But then that's so good because if you don't do that, he might feel limited or kind of too rigid. But Clemson also that year had so much talent and IQ where if you drifted in, then Arthur might know to go higher or Brandon might drift wide, So giving that freedom within the system is very important as well. And I feel like a team can know tactics, but you need problem solvers within the game. And if you have a couple of those, plus, like I said, the back line and a goal scorer, that's the kind of recipe for success. And I know it sounds like generic to say, but and also too, just not making mistakes. Like we've seen so many games more that we've been so frustrated because the team is playing so well and they lose at the last 15 minutes, and it's like a lapse of moment, And it's like I remember we played you guys the preseason of 2023. And I think we lost 2-0, but it could have been much more to be fair. But we were very disciplined. We played a 5-4-1. We were solid, and of course there was rotation and whatnot. But there's a couple of mistakes that we made, and it was within seconds we're almost punished, right? Mm-hmm. But it just shows how if you make those mistakes now, and you continue that over, come tournament time, and you don't nip it in the butt and have a conversation about it, that could be the moment that you lose your season off one mistake in the tournament, right? Or it's golden goal, wherever it may be. So it's just, if a mistake is made, go to the drawing board so it doesn't happen again, because we've seen too many times the last 2 or 3 weeks the same mistakes happen.
Yeah, and I think, it's funny that you said the problem-solving thing, because that's exactly what I was going to say is, teams that just look stuck versus players that know how to effectively problem solve within a game without having to have their coach try to tell it. It's imagine a coach sitting there on the sideline, they might know what might work, but they're yelling it out. And it's you basically just told them what you're going to try to do. Yeah. But if you have players who are on the same page with the coaching staff and they have these ideas of how to break down teams ahead of time, because we're even hearing that some teams out there, if you can believe it or not, aren't even watching tape on their opponents.
Yeah.
So it's that's tough because you
need to be able to watch tape. Even if it's not in depth, you need to know at least the trend or the formation and whatnot, because
or who you're going to be going up against. If I'm a left winger, I want to see the playing style of the right back that I'll be going up against. See
and mentally too,
you find in his game that I can exploit.
If you watch some film or do an 8-minute analysis video from an assistant coach or head coach, and you see the 6 drifts out wide to make to be a right back, and then the winger comes inside, right? If they do that multiple times a game, going into the game what's going to happen most likely. So mentally, that already gives you okay, we know in training you're to go over it, of course, hopefully, right? In games, we're going to know that's going to happen. And of course, it might break down, but that's so much better rather than going into a game and being okay, let's do it. Because then when that first movement happens, it's whoa, wait a second, why am I following? And the gap opens up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
one point on that, I think, is also I can understand a little bit with how chaotic the season can be sometimes, how quick it can move, maybe not being able to go as far in depth with some opponents. But I think I remember times like that in my career where we didn't have as much time to prepare. And if we skipped over something, it didn't give me that same feeling of routine that I had prepared for every single game, even if it wasn't as much about the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 90-minute games, sometimes it can feel like the longest 90 minutes of your life, or you're running out of time, even from minute 1. So not even having a glimpse at what you're getting yourself into, you, instead of spending the whole first 20 minutes trying to figure out what are they really going to do, what are they you kind of already have an idea. So you're saving yourself some time on figuring out how to break down teams. But I think also with Dylan bringing up some aspects of the training, sometimes I see it mainly in the club level. So I always have kind of my routine advice for some of the newer coaches in the clubs. And this kind of goes back to, aspects of trying to find my notes here. It's like you want, where the heck is it? This is bad.
No, I mean, I can speak on for the training. You need a routine, but you also have to mix it up sometimes too. Like, for example, if it's match day -1, it might be a walkthrough, of course, but if you do 10, 12 minutes of small side and some competition, it gets the blood going and gets you're mentally kind of switching on, And I think, like I said, it's so chaotic. So if you play on a Monday, then play on a Friday, or if you're on a Tuesday, then Saturday. A day and a half of that's recovering if you play 90 minutes, right? You're recovering Wednesday, light training session, Thursday, then a training Friday. So it's, hopefully you get your tactical understanding and who you're playing against within the training, but still making it worthwhile so the player does feel fulfilled and healthy, So whether it's, okay, this team plays this formation, after 60 minutes, it might be a track meet, but for the first 45, we're going to play this way. And then within that, make the training somewhat exciting. So it's okay, we didn't just walk and do tactics.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a part of it. I finally found it. But yeah, coming in, establishing a philosophy and actually having principles within the culture and the style of play and how you're going to play. Mainly the characteristics, not maybe so much the formation, because that can kind of change while maintaining principles and characteristics. But I think, and this is where I want to kind of get an insight into the training session side, because the way I view it is if you do all of the philosophy principles thing as the foundation, every time you are on the training pitch, it should show, or those training sessions should show a lot of what you've set up in the culture. And then obviously that goes downstream to the match day. But obviously within training for Clemson, with just the type of talent you're out there with, what's the vibe and maybe, I guess, the objective within a team on, the work day?
Yeah, I think one or maybe a few of the principles that we had were trying to play in 3 touches or less. I think when you have so much talent at a place like that, it can be easy to have players dribbling and trying to do their individual thing. But one of the things that we harped on, especially later on in my career there, was making sure that we knew how to play quickly with tempo as a team, because, a lot of teams started to sit deeper on us and we had to move the ball quicker with that. Then I think just the competition level, it never dropped, whether it was a work day or not. Work day, tactical day, there was always some time for competition. And when there was the competition time, everybody was ready and fighting for it. So those 2 things stick in my mind, that I can always hear Mike Noonan's voice in my head, not letting you head a ball for a pass or taking more than 3 touches, or, a bunch of different decision-making things that I think each coach has their things that they focus on. So Clemson was had their unique focuses, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I feel like that's what you'd see in the pros anyway. It's a lot of, or when you start getting up there, everybody has the technical ability. It's how fast you can play. And we always say oh, well, the speed of the game is so much higher in the pros. When people say that, they're talking about the mental side, and how quick you can move the ball, not the players are that much faster, because there are some amazing athletes that within the college game that can handle jumping right into the pros. I mean, even Jerron would probably admit to everybody that he's not the fastest dude on earth, but he hasn't looked out of place whatsoever with Orlando City.
Yeah.
But mentally, his vision, he sees plays before they happen. So that increases, he doesn't need many touches. He already knows how to move that ball right off his foot, and it's placing him right into an environment that he's a natural. So Yeah, that's good training advice for some coaches out there. Limit the touches.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not to like keep jumping around like from team aspects to player aspects, but we're not asking you to like say names, but like I guess with your experience, and it doesn't sound like this is something that maybe Clemson really deals with, but going back to maybe some of the more or the players who are a little bit wired towards the selfish side, who aren't showing like a team first mentality, like how would you approach, being a leader in a locker room and you kind of like tell that someone is just like not on the same page in terms of like we need to be one cohesive team and you're kind of the outlier. Like I know it's a harder topic because it's kind of delicate, but I guess I'm also just asking because, if some guys have these themes across the NCAA landscape and they try to jump into a pro environment and they haven't learned from those mistakes yet, they're in for kind of a rude awakening. But
yeah, that's definitely a different story. Once you're in the pro environment, I don't think there's very much tolerance for it unless you're a DP or a star player for the team. But as far as how to handle it in the college environment, I think I was lucky that we had such a great culture that we didn't have to deal with it too much. But my personal philosophy was never to attack someone. I think it's easy to kind of react that way. Like, what are you doing? This is so selfish. There's 30 other guys. Everybody has similar feelings. But I think to understand what they're individually feeling and why they're lashing out that way, or maybe feeling that they're more important than the group and acting like they're more important than the group, I think to get on their level and then to not sort of persecute them, but let them understand that, share these experiences. We're all going through these experiences, but we can't all react that way or else we wouldn't have a team anymore. And then once you get them to connect with other people on the team, they realize that they're not alone in it and they can find some other resources to help them get through it. And then I feel like you get some more team chemistry through that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because, attacking people, you're just going to put them on the defensive, and then it just kind of drives them away a little bit further. So,
yeah, and people in that position typically are already defensive. They feel insecure in their spot in the team in a lot of different ways. So I think trying to reach them in a different way can help sometimes.
Yeah. So again, on the positive side of player interactions, I mean, a lot of what we do here on College Soccer Match Day is we do a lot of scouting. We talk from coaching perspectives as well. You've obviously played with a large group of special players, like Silla, Pop Marboy, Duran, Hamdi Diop, all the way down to George Marks has a good start right now with his Philadelphia Union career. Justin Malou, Isaiah Reed, Joey Skinner, Sean Smart, Titus, and then the new crew that'll be moving on eventually, but we already see it with Ransford, Richie, Mise, Remy. The whole group, really, you can kind of say those types of things. But like, of the best you've played with, because you even came into Clemson in a pro environment. Mm-hmm. So, but like, what are some of the things that really separate the very high end players from like the good and then more so the average?
Yeah, I think the first step is your soccer IQ and your understanding of the game. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but those guys, all of the best players, understand it way before you ever see it. You'll be trying to catch up with them while they're already 3 steps ahead, and that can give them a big advantage. And then I think all of those players are ultra competitive and they understand what it means to win your 1v1 duels. I think the best players, you can almost put them anywhere on the field because they have those two things. They understand what the game demands, and then they understand that there's one guy essentially that they have to make sure that they beat in this game. And if you can beat that guy and win the space, then you're 10v9 or whatever the numbers may be in the situation on the field. So competitiveness and 1v1 duels typically make those top players.
Yeah. And we see, well, it's kind of been an interesting thing, like Justin, Pop. I don't want to give any, I don't know what an update on Hamity is, but like Gale, those guys like being in the USL environment, and you having grown up in the USL environment. And for all of the viewers out there who don't know the resume, Adam made his debut at 15 years and 10 months. So, you know, what were you doing at 15 years old? Not to boost you up too much, but it's a very cool thing. And you know what, the rise of USL infrastructure, even over the past couple years, and what is tabbed for the next couple years, it's an exciting league structure, and there will be a lot of opportunities there for a lot of players. And maybe the guys that are USL Academy right now, or maybe kind of taking the same path as you with the competing player pool of like the next academy guys, the international guys, like maybe what's your view on maybe the not so flashy name right now, but with the upcoming development, like these USL guys that come into the colleges, because we see them like some Riverhounds guys, and things like that. But like, how do you feel they stack up in the college environment? Like, there's probably no difference, but I just want your perspective on it.
I think at that age, it's hard to compare sometimes because everybody has their own development pathway and development journey. So some guys are maybe ready for the pro game at 17, 18, and some guys need that intermediary step with college in between. I know I certainly needed it. So they're fantastic players at all levels of youth soccer all across the country. And I think going back to mentality, I think that's sort of what separated the people who were quote unquote high level recruits versus low level recruits. I think once you get into that environment, there's a lot of tension as newcomers. You know, you're like, oh, I played Next Pro or I played this, and that's natural. You know, we're all competitive, and being younger, it happens even more. But once you're in that environment, the playing fields are level. So I think that guys from USL academies definitely have just as much of a chance to make it in ACC, Big Ten, wherever. So I'm excited to see the new pathways that allow these young talents to come into their own.
Yeah, because like even ECNL, like I swear there's some ECNL teams out there that, you know, can compete with. And I think maybe it's just a perception of the big brand of MLS. Like watching team to team at the youth levels, like you're going to find good players anywhere, like you said. It's just a case of like, you know, who has the extra bit of flair on the resume or whatever. But if coaches can kind of see through that, or at least like keep a wide net, they'll, like, the best players hopefully will keep finding, with the right mentality, will keep finding opportunities. But yeah, I mean, Dylan and I talked about with more teams coming in USL, like the youth players coming through, and obviously for this program, it's more, you know, the college guys that will now have more opportunities to find professional clubs to keep building their career post college. But like, I don't know if you have had much time watching like some of the USL Championship or League One games, if you have like friends in those environments, but um, with the growth that is, we're on the eve of it. Like more teams are coming next year, and it's all in preparation to get set up for the promotion relegation. But what do you think about? And obviously, I guess I'll fit this in here too. You went on trial with West Ham, so I assume you're very familiar with the football pyramid in England. I guess my question, I guess for both of you guys, we'll start with Adam. But having that structure within the U.S., like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the more opportunities, the better. I'm super excited for U.S. soccer growth in the next couple of years as a whole because of all these new clubs popping up and just the amount of opportunities that the soccer culture is going to have, the soccer community is going to have to grow and spread itself and hopefully compete with the likes of basketball and football and other major sports in the U.S. So I think that'll be really great. And yeah, I think I really respect the USL pyramid, from USL League Two to Championship, League One. You know, I think they have such a great business going and such a great league model. So I think the competitiveness has amplified some of the quality that we see. I think I sometimes enjoy watching USL Championship games more than I watch MLS games because it feels a little more raw and authentic and homegrown, but I think the level of play is increasing as well.
No, I agree. I think it's awesome. I think once all is said and done and the pro and relegation is actually in effect, it's going to be really cool to see because I think the fans are going to be more involved and the players are going to be more into it. At the end of the day, it could not change your life, but if you get promoted and you get a raise and then you get more eyes on you, that's why you want to play, right? You want to play for games that matter, right? You don't want to be second to last and then you have 15 more games and you're like, okay, well, next season, you know? And I think a cool thing with the addition of the teams are for guys who might not be affiliated to USL clubs, but go to college, have a successful career, and these clubs can now poach them ahead of MLS second teams before waiting through the draft and the combine, you know? So it's like players like, had good 4-year careers that are talented, that these USL teams hopefully have scouting infrastructure that have watched a player that can fit the system. And a week after the season ends, it could be like, hey, we want you to come on trial, or hey, we know you're good at the right fit. Come play for 1-year deal plus another year option, right? So it's like, I think that is going to be cool because we already talked about the talent, like Adam said, but adding those young players, or maybe not even young players, because with the players overseas coming to play college, like there's talent within the college game. So I think the addition of these USL teams could be cool to see them taking more of a chance on these college guys.
I think also it extends the life of careers in some ways because of that. Just thinking back on the experience I went through after the season, at the end of 2024, I think a lot of guys, maybe it's initially they want MLS and then it's Championship and then it's next pro, but if you can't get that, then there's something where you can keep your career going and still continue to develop and try to make that next step. And, you see guys who have reached MLS after careers in USL or wherever it is.
Yeah, because I think there's probably a growing opinion just based on some of the conversations I've had with players where, if you're the 22 or 23-year-old guy coming out of college, like there's a lot of MLS environments that you're not really sure if you would want to play there because it's like, well, I'm going to be the oldest guy in the next pro team. And there's a lot of teams out there that prioritize the 16, 17-year-olds because they're trying to have like the next hot young player out there. So it's like, you're playing in kind of a U19 league. I know that wasn't maybe the intent, but that's just kind of how it's turned into. So when you have a lot more opportunities out there, you might see team or players that are like, well, it's League One, but you're a season away from being in a championship, being in the top flight, stuff like that. So, a couple seasons away. And it's like, would you rather be a first team player? Because again, like as that league continues to grow, I mean, we've already seen guys that move on from USL to leagues in Europe. Probably a little bit more under the radar because the level of exposure, or like the media attention isn't quite on it. But like, I mean, there's only good things that can happen, especially for the players and I'll say also, I love the way, because we're big USL League 2 fans, me and Dylan as well, the markets in which they have these teams and the ownership of even the League 2 teams that are starting to grow into League 1 in terms of like, hey, we're serious about it. We've learned a lot. We're ready to go be a pro team rather than just a semi-pro team. The way the franchises are popping up in markets that don't have all the competing major sports, I hope that like the fans recognize how great it can be and is. And we already see it with like, Vermont Green over the summer, like they were selling out every game. Like you couldn't get tickets to it. So just a lot more of those examples along the way. And then again, with like the news of Gio Reyna popping into the ownership group of Fort Lauderdale United, and obviously Tim Howard's been affiliated with Memphis for a while, like DeMarcus Beasley with Fort Wayne, and Landon Donovan with San Diego. There's so many, kind of these iconic American players that are investing their time and knowledge into USL because it's a lot easier to join a group there than it is to pay the $500 million franchise fee to be a part of MLS. So, I mean, I love what they're doing. I think, the more that they can
just invest and get people and then add young talent and all that.
Yeah.
Like get people that know the game, that are pro of the game, that have vision, that has been through it in the youth and college system. Like you need people that know the game. And of course you need the business people, right? And the numbers people, but you need people who are in tune with the culture and what makes it tick and click. And I think Vermont Green is like, they all love the game, number one, but they also realize culture and what it takes to make a club that's run by the fans, because the fans is, it's what makes it.
Yeah.
I think
go for it.
I think a lot of that does more for the game in the US than a new expansion MLS team a lot of times, because it's more grassroots. And, I've actually talked to people who live in Burlington, Vermont, and who aren't soccer fans, and yet they feel connected
to the games. Yeah.
And, it's something that's bigger than just one club or, something like that. It can grow the game in big ways.
Yeah, and I think you see it with, again, over in Europe, like the team is a part, or like not only most of the times like a part of the community, it is the community.
Yeah.
And it's like they're in lockstep together. So, especially being from an area that, because like Buffalo Niagara, we didn't have a pro soccer team. I think a lot of people do love the sport there. And we have one of the bars that ends up on NBC Sports sometimes. Shout out to Mesque. But, I'm from one of those communities that will be getting a USL team, which is awesome. And the level of excitement already, just even in the kind of the planning stages, seeing more of that, like Des Moines, I'm sure I don't know where they're at on theirs, but like even Arkansas, like if you watch an Arkansas women's soccer game, that's like packed out. And how Little Rock has done in USL League 2, like there's these, and even West Virginia, Like
Mhm.
you have two big time D1 programs, you have a big time D2 program. Like these kind of almost forgotten about areas when somebody is actually like, hey, we're going to build something here. The vibe is just much more
Authentic
again,
and
yeah,
real.
like yeah, exactly. Um, any other topics along the, I guess the title of the show before we move on to the last bit?
I think we covered a lot of it. I think I like how we tied in the USL kind of world because I think it goes hand in hand with the college soccer. Because I think for USL to be successful, college soccer has to continue being successful. And if you could tie those two together, with the pro and relegation and the kind of a pipeline to USL teams, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times we think of the draft and the combine like, oh, it's the pipeline to there, but what's the percent that actually maintains that actually like has a career? So I think it's cool how we tied that and kind of give light to the possibility of making a stability, like making something that's stable for a long period of time,
Yeah, yeah, because I think the feed
like a
from
USL
college to
combine maybe.
USL is going to be, oh man, if there's a USL combine,
Should we make the should we patent that real
if
quick?
any, yeah,
I
if
mean,
any,
but imagine that though. It's like same thing, and I don't know how the specifics, but like maybe it can't be the players that were part of the MLS combine, but I love the MLS. I think the MLS combine's sick. I think like that concept is awesome, but I feel like what happens to the players that don't make it? Is it just okay? Now let me try to get with agents that get with USL, or is there a way that we can do it so it's like a smooth network where it's like it's not it doesn't go like MLS, then wait. Okay, let's see what the championship clubs are doing. Then wait. Let's see what League One. It's you can pick and choose if you're a good player what you want to do rather than just waiting for the opportunity that's given to you.
yeah, because I guess that's a nice little pit stop because I know a lot of Dylan's background in terms of like post college and doing trials. But like, yeah, you just think of instead of spending, 2 weeks to a month on trial with a team that might not even be that serious about signing anybody, having a platform where every team can just kind of like figure out who's available
Yeah, a
and more
network.
meaningfully invite rather than just be like, yeah, I mean, show up. Oh wow, you're a fantastic player, but yeah, we just don't have the salary for it. Thanks for hanging out though. It's
Yeah.
like what? I mean, could have been spending that time
On
elsewhere,
another
but
trial or doing
but
something.
again, like the exposure level, because a lot of they're almost is next to no scouting from a team perspective. It's kind of outsourced sometimes. So sometimes you just don't really get like the true view of who's available out there. You just kind of have to
Wing it.
rely on like agents or people who like college coaches who know other coaches in the professional realm that can kind of get some opportunities lined up.
And I think that's where, like, my last topic, it will be brief. I think, of course, England and all these other foreign countries are so far ahead of us because I think the agent's job is to negotiate the salary and like the best deal. And then you have the scouts that like, hey, this is the player. Let's talk to the agent. Whereas here, it's, of course, like I said, we don't have the infrastructure. It's the agent acting as the scout as well, saying this is why you need this player. And I get that that's how it is, right? There's no like it is what it is, right? You got to respect it. But if we could get a step in there where it goes scout likes a player, gets the agent, and all the agent has to do is negotiate, not try to explain why this player should be on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's too much salesmanship and cold calling teams and
I know, but I get it because
yeah,
that's how it
and there
is.
are some agents who are fantastic at it.
Yeah,
We
I
might
was saying if
have
we
one
could
on
smooth the
with us
process.
eventually.
Yeah,
But,
so agents just have to worry about being an agent and not like being like you need this player. It's like I think that would make their job easier as well. You know?
yeah.
Should we do predictions for tonight or what? We have to do a Clemson Wake.
Yeah, we could do like the
We
college
can just
game
go through it
day
and see what we think.
type thing of. But yeah, coming into tonight, we'll end on this. But Wake Forest plays Clemson. Actually, I'll bring up the schedule here. So we have Clemson at Wake Forest, NC State at Pitt, Louisville at Duke, and then for the Big Ten, some really good matchups as well. UCLA versus Indiana, and they'll want to bounce back from a recent loss. But they've actually been one of my favorite teams to watch is Indiana. But, I mean, that kind of fits with Clemson in terms of the type of sustained success. Because I almost thought it was wrong, but I feel like they made the tournament for, like, the past 50 years or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a crazy stat. But, yeah, Clemson come in undefeated in ACC play with wins over Pitt, Cal, and then they tied SMU. Wake only has played 2 ACC games so far with a draw and a loss. So draw against North Carolina, and then that 6-3 loss that they'll hopefully quickly want to forget that anyone's ever talking about it against Virginia. Luckily, they've had an opportunity at a bounce-back game, so they're coming in off of a 7-0 win over Liberty. But this is you've played them 3 times last year. I think it was split 1-1-1 technically, because obviously there were 2 tournament games. But this just feels like one of my favorite sayings, and whenever I hear it, is like, oh, when those 2 teams get together, you just throw out the record book. Like anything can happen. So, Adam, what your experience in this matchup? It feels like one of the premier matchups year to year whenever these 2 teams get together.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great game as always. I think Clemson, if they want to win, they have to be defensively sound. Wake is going to be good on the ball. They're going to be strong at home. So, like you said, anything can happen. I'm going to go 2-1 Clemson. I think it'll be a 1-goal game, but we'll see.
Go ahead, Mark.
What?
Don't look at me like that.
God. I do have a lot of good relationships on the Wake side. I'm sure, some of the parents are going to be upset that I was wearing Clemson, but I had to represent you, Adam. Yeah, I think a lot of it, we've seen kind of some, and again, this, not to say it's like these weren't at all the teams we were referring to in terms of like inconsistency. But Clemson struggling to find a result against Queens, but Queens, to be fair, has done well against a lot of teams this year in terms of the defensive effort. So I think Clemson will be fired up, especially after last year. There's a lot of guys who were a part of that team that suffered those defeats in tournament time. And I think maybe the mentality on both sides is going to be like, well, this is just, I don't know, my opinion, but with this matchup in particular, you don't want to be the first team to concede. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if that'll kind of show itself in terms of maybe the attacking ambition from the start, but just with the way the teams are set up, I do think there are goals in this game.
You can say it. You can be honest.
I do think the transition game of Clemson is just, we've been watching them all year. It's the way they can get from box to box with such great speed, and like the combinations in the attack and the way Nate Richmond has been this season, him being back is such a key aspect. Even without Wahabu Musa tonight, I don't know. I think like a 2-2 draw, but it could be an absolute blowout on either end. It could
That's college footy, though.
It could be anything. It's
I
crazy.
think I'm going to go 3-3 draw as well. I think Wake's coming off a 7-0 win at home, so they're going to be confident. And I think the front three is finally clicking more. But then again, you look at Clemson's attack and with the press, and this is respect to both back lines. I think both back lines are solid, but I think the offensive power from both, it's just going to be like a lot to handle. So I think 3-3. I think 3-3. But and again, knowing our predictions, it's going to be something completely opposite. So
because I mean, there's just so many important players on the back end that, you know, obviously aren't there anymore. So, I mean, Andemo's back, but Trace is gone. Prince and Ponza's gone. And, I mean, we're at the stage of the season where there's enough tape out there for two very experienced coaches that love a tactical battle. And I think, like, the chess match between Bobby Moose and Mike Noonan is always, like, an interesting one. So,
I'll say I've never played a game where it's been so heavily dictated by that coaching chess match. I feel like every game I've played where it's been Bobby Muse up against Noonan, it's been whoever can have the better press, and whoever has the better press to start the game, it never finishes like that. They're always trying to move pieces around and outmatch each other. So both teams want to be expansive on the ball, and both teams want to press really high. I think high scoring, even game, like you guys called, could be right on.
Yeah, especially if, like, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's like what you saw with Virginia. When it's on, when you're on, you're on. And
that was crazy.
Everything just clicks, and it seems like every time you take a chance, you're going to score. So, you know, sometimes you have that energy and you just feel like you're getting everything your way. And, you know, these are teams that are both capable because, I mean, I think one of the biggest parts about this game is the level or the amount of players on the field that are next level caliber, all coming together and just trying to fight out a very, you know, basically a rivalry game, even if it's not like geographic. It just feels like, based on where these two programs have been over the past several years, it's definitely the big show.
No, yeah, it always felt like a rivalry, you know.
There we go. Any last, I guess, bits here? Anything you want to shout out, Adam?
Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a great time. We'll see my next steps end up, either on the playing side or business side of the game, but definitely want to stick around footy and this industry. So hopefully we'll all be in it together.
Dylan?
No, and it was a really good episode. It was good to get like this perspective, especially from a captain, and I mean, extremely well spoken. So, I mean, it should be on the field if we're being honest, but if not, we'll probably all meet again sometime if we, you know, come up with a team or whatnot. Who knows? No.
You know, an agent once told me, and this is my final remarks, that a left-footed American center back is like gold, and we have one here. So if there's any teams out there who, I think you're open to trials and still at this point, but
it's a no-brainer.
I think especially one who's, you know, played all over the field, has a lot of just natural ability that's been amassed over a long career, especially at such a high level, or being around, you know, the Loudoun group from 16 before going into a highly competitive program and being successful there. Hopefully everybody got more of an impression on who you are as a person and the type of mentality you have or the vision. And then also, you know, you didn't give us any Spanish, but for everybody out there who didn't know, the kid from Maryland is bilingual and very sharp. I love talking to you just on the phone and stuff about soccer in general. So a great mind for the business side and the player personnel side and all of that. So that route, I have no doubts if there's opportunities there that you'd kill it there just as much as still at, how old are you now? 22 still? Yeah. I mean, he's still such a kid. He's ready.
Wear the beard color up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate you joining us. And it's always great having kind of one of the big names from last season pop on, because me and Dylan will have to figure out who else we can get that has a high profile.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. Thanks for having me on. It was a great time.
All right. Yeah, maybe we'll have you back on when it comes to ACC championship.
Tournament time, yeah.
You guys want.
Yeah. But, in the meantime, wish you luck. Thanks, everybody, for joining out there. Again, if you want to reach out to any of us, I put in our Twitters at the bottom. But, until episode 10, we'll see you later, and we'll still be watching games.